2026 is around the corner, mate. And AI is becoming more and more prevalent through the tools. You're getting loads of different types of tools, and you get guys that call themselves prompt engineers now, right? You can use AI to your benefit, or you can stay away from it and kind of be scared of it. How is it changing things in your world already, or is it?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, look, it's we're in the sweet spot of I think the AI rollout or the new tech renaissance that we're in at the moment, because there's still an element. They haven't made it good enough yet that you trust it to do a communications job. It's good, but it's not. It's if depending on what you're selling, effectively, you're still going to need a human component in play, right? That said, you don't need as many people. So, for example, if you're in an AER, SDR role, if you're in an AE role, anything kind of entry level, then you want to be trying to progress as soon as possible, or you're going to need to differentiate yourself, because there are so many AI outreach tools out there. Now, look, I've played with a few, and again, it completely depends on what you're selling, right? You're not going to have an AI solution talk through complicated cybersecurity sales processes and things like that yet, right? But if you're buying a Netflix subscription or something like that, you might have an AI salesperson there, because it's a simple transactional process. So, it depends. It really, really depends on the industry you're working in, the kind of tech you're selling, right? So it's not a all horses for courses scenario. But it is changing things. So, on the positive side of things, it's allowing. Now, I am historically, I can communicate verbally. I am shocking at reading and writing. I'll remind you again, I've got, 3.5, 4.5 GCSEs and an MVQ level 2 in catering and hospitality. None of those were in English literature. My reading and writing is shocking, mate. So for me, it makes it really, really easy for me to communicate to people via email, and it helps me to be able to draft out intricate, complicated emails in a fraction of the time that I would have done previously, which speeds up my day massively. It helps me to communicate with organizations in completely different countries and languages that I don't understand, and still close deals, right? So there's a ton of benefit at the end of the day, but you don't need as many people to do it. So on one side, it is going to make a salesperson's role a lot easier. On the other side, it's organizations don't need as many people in the role. So you just have to be wary that we are in a bit where people are much more dispensable at the moment than they have been. If you looked at COVID, when nobody wanted to move jobs, and at that time, the candidate was king. And it was, you spoke to recruitment agencies and they could never find business on because people weren't hiring, right? There was that big old kind of scenario where, they had loads of jobs on, and all they had to do was they couldn't find any candidates. Nobody wanted to move jobs. It's now flipped on its head, right? So there aren't as many jobs out there. There's a lot more people looking for work. It's a lot more competitive. So you just have to keep that in mind, right? But at the same time, just so that we're not kind of finishing that point on a negative, it's as easy as possible to be put in that scenario. We are living in a world now where you could lose your job tomorrow and, start pretty much whatever you want within a couple of months' time, or you can take that knowledge, that tech, etc., and you can put it into any scenario. So, I think it's super exciting.
Yeah, I think that's well said, mate. And I was going to ask you, do you think, because there's a lot of people out there I'm speaking to, SDRs in particular, but also AEs, more SDRs though that are worried about AI replacing them. I did a podcast a few weeks back where I said, 36% of teams in SaaS across the SaaS space have started streamlining their SDR teams, and I think there's this misconception potentially, or perception rather, that SDRs feel that AI is coming for their jobs and they're getting done. What's your take on that? Do you think there's an element of truth to that, or is it really the SDRs that are going to leverage AI the best are the ones that are going to thrive, and the ones that don't are just going to start lagging?
I think it's a bit of both. at the end of the day, if I'm an organization and I previously had 20 SDRs, I now only need 10 at most, right? But what I do want, and what you're going to have, I can guarantee definitely at the moment is, and especially if you're selling a fairly complicated SaaS solution, or if you're selling a good kind of SaaS solution, I can pretty much guarantee that whilst an AI solution can go out there and find me a lead and bring that lead back, the way that it's going to qualify that lead is going to be completely different to if a human being was having that conversation, right? So if I'm an SDR and I'm having a conversation with an organization, I'm going to be able to read in the context of what they're saying. I'm going to be able to delve in between the lines of why they're asking certain questions, why are they experiencing certain pain points. And unless I set up my AI solution to predict that that conversation is going to happen, the chances are it's not going to think to do those things, because it works on a reactive kind of, a fairly like linear how it's going to operate. So whilst 100%, it's, teams are going to get smaller. You don't need 20, 30 SDRs on a team now. You could do 5 to 10. But on the other side, the amount of companies that are popping up, it's not, when you look at these huge layoffs that happen and things like that, and all these people that have left, Facebook and things like that, they're not on the market for long. It's not like there's a shortage of tech companies out there that you can go and work at, And I think that's the important part is, the world's not out to get you, but the landscape is changing. So if you're not clocked on that the landscape is changing, and if you are playing that victim side of things, and then you might struggle a little bit. But if you are using AI to your advantage, and you're using AI to send your emails out quicker, to be more productive in your day, to have clearer conversations, to do the most unreal background checks of organizations that you can see, 5 minutes before you're in a meeting, you can get a complete synopsis of the company's 10 years just by doing a quick prompt into ChatGPT. Do you know what I mean? So you have all the tools necessary to be successful, but it is a more competitive market. So I suppose it's then, deciding which battles you're going to be going for and picking the ones that you think are going to be the most success. Or when you're looking at companies, if you're looking to get into an SDR role, just be a bit careful around the companies that you're looking at and the kind of salespeople that they want to be hiring, if that makes sense.
Perfect sense, mate. Well said. Guys, if you enjoyed that, make sure you like and subscribe. And if you want to see the full podcast, click right here.